Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 56, I think. I just looked and then I can't remember. 56 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Harvey and Jirah on with me. I guess we're to the point where you don't need introductions anymore.
I mean, good to see everybody again. I think it's been a little while since all three of us actually were on the same episode at the same time.
Yes.
I think so. I think I've been jumping on and saying, what y'all doing? Great. Have fun. Bye. And off I would go. Today, I am here.
I think that's all we can say. All any of us can say.
I'm here. I got up. I'm good. I got new iGel stickers.
Oh, cool. Is that a beaver? What is it? What's the mascot?
Man, we're so disconnected from our world. That's a hedgehog.
That is a hedgehog.
I think, the audience, I'm so sorry, audience, for not painting a good word picture here. I think I can be forgiven for mistaking a beaver and a hedgehog. That doesn't feel like a big miss on my part.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving you a hard time. That's like conversation number one when you introduce somebody to iGel. Is like, why is it called iGel? And iGel is pronounced Igel in German, and Igel in German is a hedgehog.
Well, there you go.
Full circle.
And I think Igel is like the abbreviations for the company that started them, and that's how they ended up as.
That's a legitimately cool company name. I'm legitimately just past wondering about how do certain companies get named, because I just assume we're running out of good names. So you just take what you can get.
Yep. XenTegra. I'm just kidding. It's become an icon, I guess. I don't know.
I agree. X's are cool. More X's in your name.
Somebody had to remind me the other day how we got the name. I was like, oh, that's right. That is where it came from. It came from where I thought it came from, but I forgot who it came from.
Oh, I don't know if I know the who it came from. I thought the who was that guy that I'm looking at right now.
No, somebody else came up with the name. Yep, true story. I won't call them out on the podcast because they might not be proud of it, or they might be proud of it. Yeah. There's a chance they might be listening because they are involved in the Nutanix world.
Well,
they took my ideas and made a name out of it. And to be honest, I love the logo because I love it's flat and the way it looks. It just depends. Like if you say it real Southern, if you say it like with a Latin accent, or maybe put an accente above the E or whatever. When the Latin guys say XenTegra, I really like it. When my country friends say XenTegra, I don't like it so much.
I'm not sure. I can't think of any tech company name that would just work really well in that context.
Yeah. Microsoft. Yeah, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Amazon, AWS. Okay, I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
I don't even have to try. Like that accent, I don't have to try. It literally comes out.
Andy, your presence was definitely missed, sir.
Well, if you can't laugh at yourself, who are you going to laugh at?
I volunteer.
I rode my one wheel to work.
Whoa. Fancy.
Yeah.
And didn't catch fire?
No, it did not catch fire. I've got the newest, latest, greatest one. All the bugs are out of it.
Okay. There you go.
I almost got hit by a car, but it wasn't that close. I hope my wife's not listening.
There's no firmware fix for that.
Not for that one. That's called look both ways. All right. So guys, before I jumped on, you guys were chit-chatting about what to cover today. And we came up with the always relevant topic of immutable backup, the best defense against ransomware. I feel like we've covered this, but you can never cover this enough. And maybe there's something beyond what we've covered that we're going to talk about here.
Well,
or maybe it's just like, like your mom, brush your teeth, you tell me all the time. I know, I keep telling you, brush teeth.
Yes.
I guess if a customer was listening and was 100% assured that their backups were completely recoverable, couldn't be attacked, were going to be there when they need them, I guess they can stop listening now. For everybody else, maybe there's something for them in the rest of this episode.
And we assume 99% of people are still listening at this point.
That's like if you try to think about that right before you go to bed every night, what happens?
You dream about it.
It's like right before bed last night, right before I went to sleep last night, my wife gave me like 2 or 3 things she would like to have done, like honeydew things. I'm already exhausted from the weekend. It took me a little bit to go to sleep after that. I just want to get into Monday. I just want Monday to start. That's all.
In a professional context, you'd want to be like, can you please open a ticket? But
Yeah.
you probably can't do that at home.
No, but that's not a bad idea. Do they make ServiceNow Home Edition?
Yes, results probably not guaranteed.
Right. That would be frowned upon.
But what is, you know what? That's not a bad idea.
My users would have feedback.
There's a product there somewhere. The honeydew ticketing system. Well, okay. So Jirah, Harvey, we'll start with Jirah. Why cover this? I think we just covered why cover this, but is it truly just a matter of making sure everybody just doesn't forget how important this topic is?
I think it's a pretty good reason, yeah. Because I mean, it's evergreen, right? Like as long as we've had technology, we've had a need for good backups of that technology, right? Like they kind of go hand in hand.
So I think the main topic here, right, is about immutable backup.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, and I had this conversation a week ago with somebody, I forget who it was. What is immutable backup?
So the immutability there would imply that it, can't be attacked, can't be modified, makes it more resilient against loss. And there's certain ways that you could get there with traditional backup technology, right? With like file permissions, access control lists, but that's still you configuring a platform to add that versus the immutability being an actually intrinsic aspect of the medium you're writing your backups to.
So let me ask you this. I didn't understand how ransomware worked until a couple of days ago. And somebody said, what happens is it makes a copy of your data, encrypts that copy, and then deletes your copy.
Yeah,
True?
that's probably, broadly speaking, yeah, pretty fair.
So it doesn't just put it all in one big massive zip file.
Mm-mm.
No.
Copies, encrypts while, during the copy process or afterwards, and then deletes yours. And then your data's gone. And the only thing you do is get it back from the last time. So in this case, we want that data to be sitting there. I guess with ransomware, it's gonna encrypt and do this to your backups as well that are sitting there unprotected. And this creates a scenario where that copy, delete, you might be able to copy, but you can't delete.
Right. Well, that's part of the threat model, right? Yeah, this would address as well is, let's say it does whatever bad stuff it wants to do on the workstation or on the endpoint, right? Let's make sure that my backup data, which is like my last resort, right? Like the lifeboat there is not something that can do that too, right? Like let's make sure it can't touch our backup systems.
Yeah. And to be clear, when you say what it does on the workstation, I know you know what you're talking about, but let me just walk through this with you. If my workstation has access to a network drive where I have the ability to copy and delete stuff, it's going to do that bad stuff over there too.
Yeah, anywhere, yes to all the above, but yeah, basically, all right, ransomware can do bad things to anything that you can do as a end user, right? So local drives, network drives, shares, any of the above.
Yeah, and anything that you have access to modify, you will have potentially have spread it in that way because it's kind of using you and your permissions and your locations to go in and do its work.
Yeah. You are the key. So we just got to take away all your power.
You are the key.
Like if I just lock you down, but then you can't do that, right? Because the people got to get stuff done.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So let's see. What is immutable backups? How does it work? Did we cover how it works in that dialogue?
So we can go a little bit deeper, right? So fundamentally, right, we want to throw backups at a system where if we've told the system this data should be immutable, then we allow new data to be generated, right? We're going to write our nightly backup sets or whatever your interval is, right? Could be hourly, could be weekly. Maybe want a little bit of a cooldown timer where there can be maybe changed for the first 10 minutes or first hour. But once the period of immutability has started, then normally the functionality is they shouldn't ever be able to be deleted. They can only just expire on a planned retention cycle, right? So if you tell it, keep this data for 3 years or 5 years, then you can't delete it sooner than 3 years or 5 years, whatever your policy is set to. So that's what we should level set on as what we mean by when we say, hey, your backups really need to land on some kind of immutable data platform.
And going back to the conversation around, okay, so you got the stuff that gets backed up from the system. In theory, that stuff's not, even if it's not immutable, in theory, that user doesn't have access to it. Or if you're the right user with the right credentials, you do have access to it.
So for this kind of definition, right, for immutable backups, I would say that actually even the admin, right, shouldn't be able to touch those, right? Because we've set a policy, right, as an organization to say this data can't be deleted sooner than X, Y, Z.
Right.
So then I can't think of a reason why an admin, right, should be able to override that.
Well,
because you might have like legal, you could have business justification for needing that retention in place, right? So it would need to.
Well, I'm talking about if it's not immutable. In other words, it's the network share where all the backups go, and Tommy, the admin, surfs the internet or does whatever he needs with his admin credentials, and next thing you know, he's wiping out the system.
Totally, yeah. Then you're relying on the fact that hopefully, like, I guess I would hope that unprivileged users can't do a delete, but yeah, nothing's enforcing that, like a privileged admin, right, or a compromised account, or malware on his workstation. Yeah, totally, with his permission, could do bad things to the data because he has permissions to do things to the data.
Right, and that goes back to one of the things that we talk about all the time, has been a topic for a long time, is making sure that your end users only have access to the things that you need them to have access to. I can't tell you how many times I've looked as a quote unquote normal user, right, and then have access to shares that I shouldn't have access to because security by obscurity doesn't work. You can't just hide access to the files or to the server shares and things like that. If your users have permission to it, that's how things get through.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, Harvey, even we're seeing, right, the sort of the best practices, the leading edge of IT administration practices. We see admins, right, saying how little access do I need to do my job, right? Like if I don't need this on a day-to-day basis, I'm not going to have those permissions myself either, right? Because that's a liability, right? The less if I have what I need to do my job, it goes beyond just end users into anybody, right? It's touching the technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jirah, what is the key technology behind immutable data storage?
So yeah, well, I mean, where this article would get to is where Nutanix can act as an immutable backup provider, right? Through as a platform, right, and then specifically through object storage as a backup target.
So what is that? I mean, there's like, I want to say Amazon invented this, or maybe they didn't, somebody else did it, but they made a big deal out of it in their AWS platform for very cost-effective storage. What's Amazon's is called S3. What's the actual encryption? What's the concept technically called?
Yeah, S3, yeah, right, as the product, and then evolved into becoming the protocol. Generically referred to as like just object storage, right? So that's the capability to place data, retrieve data, reads and writes, and it's you could think of it as not being kind of the older school SMB or NFS based storage that in the past has been what we've presented to backup systems, right? Like a Veeam server, a semantic server, net backup, whatever you're using. You'd give it some kind of bulk storage that would normally be SMB NFS. S3 is the newer variant of that, and because it comes with some benefits in the protocol, one of them being that ability to say the protocol itself, the platform itself, is enforcing the immutability, right? Sometimes called worm, right? So write once, read many. But that ability to say, once I've written this, it should not be deletable by any human until it hits a retention policy that I've set as an organization.
Yeah. Well, then the article goes on to talk about other reasons other than ransomware, assured data integrity, simplified compliance, and elimination of accidental data changes. I've probably been the culprit for multiple of those things along the way.
Well, they're good to have, right? Like this is sort of building the argument around, like, why would you use this sort of a target for your backups, right? And of course, yeah, like data integrity is a huge one, right? If you're going to write it and it's that important to you, there should be really no question about, is it going to be there when you go to do a read operation on it or use it for a restore? Compliance, yeah, if your backups are subject to compliance requirements, then for sure that'd be a no-brainer to say, let's let the technology implement that versus automation, scripting, human compliance, all things that could have variance or drift on them.
Right.
And then, yeah, like the entire reason you would adopt this, right, is to have that avoidance of accidental data changes. And let's be honest, accidental or even malicious, right? Like if no changes means no changes, no matter what the goal is.
Right.
You know, we had a situation not too long ago where somebody went in and deleted a bunch of data, tried to, we saw that it was happening, had to turn them off in the cloud. How does ransomware impact cloud-based storage? Is it fair to say that it doesn't, or does it? Am I way off in thinking that that storage is immutable?
I can picture ransomware, you know, we've seen more and more sophisticated ransomware in the wild, right? To where ransomware now speaks hypervisors. Ransomware can speak SAN, right? So if we haven't already, I think it's only a matter of time that we see cloud aware ransomware, which is also terrifying to think about. But
it is.
Yeah, I've got to think if it's something that a human can do, right, then it's something that ransomware can probably do as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not wrong into thinking that's a whole different conversation, but it is going to happen someday.
I mean, what a terrifying thought. Like, what if ransomware read your browser cookies and scraped out your AWS credentials? I mean, I'm sure I didn't just give anybody an idea, but that's truly terrifying stuff. You know, you're in an authenticated browser session.
You think at that point, you think at that point they're just attacking one person versus a whole team of people and a whole company's worth of data, and it's less valuable?
It depends on what that one person has access to. I mean,
does this person work at an MSP?
Unfortunately, right, this is kind of describing the same business model, just in a different place.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so how to implement immutable backup? Is this specifically as it relates to Nutanix, or is it just industry-wide?
This is pretty industry-wide, actually, right? This is a pretty broadly educating article. But yeah, some like things to keep in mind, key requirements to strive for, right? So, of course, we talked about pick a platform that makes it easy by, as a platform and as a protocol, enforcing that the immutability, the worm functionality, right? That it can't change or drift over time. The zero trust, right? So enforcing authentication to the environment. That can hopefully use stuff like MFA, two-factor, things that are harder for ransomware to steal, right? Like more than just a username and password. If ransomware hopefully can't steal your one-time code or, a push notification to prove, yes, it's me logging in as the admin. Understanding, of course, that backups are not silver bullet, right? Like advanced monitoring, data protection, are also key there, right? Like I always tell customers, like, let's also talk about the edge, because malware has to get in and then malware has to call out to really be effective, right? Ransomware has to be able to phone home in order to get instructions and to do the data encryption. So we want resilient backups, but we also want to stop it earlier than needing to restore from backup as well. So understanding that, of course, it's just one tool in the toolbox around having strong backups. Yeah, detect early, right? That gets into workstation level endpoint monitoring and enforcement, alerts, mitigation responses, right? So as we're trying to spot stuff earlier, recover from infections faster, especially off hours, right? Almost anything off hours is possibly even more important of an alert than a during work hours type of alert in your event monitoring. There's a great call out here that I'll even expand into, say, remediation policies and so forth, your responses to what do we do when we've found a ransomware event or a malware event occurring on the network. And I would say actually, like in the way that most DR failures are like failures of like imagination, right? Oh, we didn't think this could happen, or that it would take this kind of path of a failure. I think that you could make a fair case that most ransomware escalations are sort of a failure to empower people to respond faster, right? Like, I'm going to authorize my service desk to disable any AD account that gets this kind of behavioral alerting. I don't care if they're a C-level executive, right? If this is the alert, disable first, apologize, and ask questions later, right? Versus don't respond to like VIP alerts. So have policies that have teeth that say, if we see this kind of behavior from a workstation, we're going to cut you off for the good of the company and then help you get it cleaned up and respond.
Yeah.
It's so funny you talk about like the executive conversation. I got several stories I could tell, but one is I was doing patches on a weekend in my corporate gig way back when, and got a help desk call. And I was like, why is somebody calling me now? And they called, and it was executive because his daughter was in to do her book report or something, and he needed me to reset his password so she could get in.
Wow.
Yeah. It was 15 years ago, plus maybe 20. I'm getting old. But still, I bet it still happens.
I'm sure it does.
All right.
Sure it does.
So Jirah, did we cover all these? I know we walked through some or most of them.
The last two would be the article gives guidance to say, avoid reinfection by scanning your backups for signs of tampering and malware before you restore it. That's pretty smart, right? Same thing goes for the endpoints, right? Like, I would say most people don't even scan endpoints anymore. If it has evidence of compromise on there, that thing's getting formatted and reinstalled.
Absolutely,
totally just nuke it.
Yeah.
And then this is, I think, pretty important, right? An impact analysis that when you generate it helps with both recovery efforts, right? Like, this happened, it caused X amount of team time to be spent on doing recoveries and restores, and verifying things were clean. Because that I think is an important stat to roll up to the business around, this link that took 5 seconds to click an email generated 50 hours of lost productivity, right? For another team's time. But that kind of data, when you roll it up, right, can help, and you multiply it times the number of attacks that people recover from all the time, gives teeth to more stronger policies, right? Around like, do we need to only whitelist email from known business partners? Do we need to do stronger scanning or URL rewriting, or like not allowed downloads, or block PDFs or block attachments, that kind of stuff. When you know what your users are vulnerable to, you can write better policies to help spend the company's time and money more wisely, right?
And overall, all that adds up, and IT becomes, I don't want to say profit center, but it saves your bacon, basically.
It really does, right? Like, I think back to earlier parts of my career where it seemed like malware or ransomware was sort of like rampant, and I, in the business I was in, I kind of just kept getting called by my customers to say, hey, help fix this, help fix that. And let's say 10 years ago, it was kind of more assumed like, well, we can't just not do our jobs without email. But I actually can think of like actually a number of roles nowadays where you might not even need to be able to receive email externally, right? Like, you can still be pretty functional, pretty effective. As an employee, I wonder if we'll see more rationalization around, hey, do you actually need external email accessibility, right, for your job role, job function? Because there's real time and money behind these kind of attacks. And if that's an easy, nope, don't need that, well, great. Now I'm just, limiting my attack surface area.
Yeah, I quit checking email weeks ago.
There you go. See, you're already more secure, Andy.
So I'm intentionally showing you guys my screen. This is my virtual desktop, which is a non-persistent virtual desktop. So it's not immutable because it does change while I'm using it. But when I reboot it, it reboots back to a gold image, everything but my user profile. That's a whole nother conversation. But, in theory, that's one evidence of immutability that we've had in our virtual desktop worlds for a long time in virtual app world. And then you take your data, make it as secure as possible, but the backups of it make it unchangeable. And then you throw in what I'm doing on this screen, where it's a iGel read-only Linux thin client. Now I've lowered my attack vector. I mean, it takes all of this plus antivirus, plus detection, MDR solutions, plus intelligence to have a fighting chance in today's IT.
Totally. And I can picture, the parts that do persist, right? Like your profile data, your like redirected file share data, needs the same kind of like versioning, easy rollback. Like if you called the help desk and said, hey, my profile, needs to get rolled back to 72 hours ago, that needs to be a well-exercised script or code path or a known procedure, right? You don't want them fumbling around like, oh, whoops, how do I roll back to that point in time? Like you want that to be a boring operation.
And I don't know how to do it, but in our OneDrive and other solutions, we have real-time SaaS to SaaS backups, and I could restore my files.
Oh yeah.
Nobody showed me how to do it yet, but I know it exists. I know I pay for it every month.
Nope.
And somebody set it up. But it goes back. It's a very much a layered approach with some common sense thinking on the front end.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely required, right? Like assuming that a SaaS service doesn't need a backup is sort of mistake number one, right?
Yeah. Well, I did that for like 5 years. I assumed it was backed up by my friends at Microsoft.
Only for a very short period of time.
Right. That really gets into like, what do you define a backup and like who's allowed to do the restore? Who's it a backup for, right?
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate it. Always good to talk immutable backups. No, really, it's one of those things you can't stress it enough that having that in your. Oh, I did want to. Oh, we didn't get to the end of the article. Nutanix. This is a feature of mine, correct?
Can be, yeah. Feature of objects, right? Which powers mine, yeah.
So it's a feature of objects. So help me understand this. So objects powers mine. Mine is which one do you pay for? Which one do you pay for?
Well, all of it. Mine is the combination of the backup tech along with the backup storage along with the backup solution, right? So like a Haiku, like a Veeam, like a Commvault, running on the cluster that then is both the backup appliance as well as the storage.
Okay, so mine enables that object level backup, right?
Right, yeah. Mine includes the storage and the application, right? Whereas where you also just run objects and bring your own application, right? Something else that spoke S3.
And then a Haiku would be the management of that system, leveraging those capabilities.
Yeah.
You could just run mine if you want it, or you need something like a third-party Haiku or Veeam.
So that third party comes with mine as a part of the solution. So
Got it.
You can think of mine as objects and a solution like you're speaking of.
Okay. So when I buy Haiku, I got to buy mine so that I can leverage the Haiku. They come together.
No, if you bought objects only and then bought Haiku, you could do it that way. Or you could buy mine that would have Haiku already in it.
Oh, I got it.
You'd have a full solution.
Yeah, you'd set mine off to the side and say, this is my backup cluster. It holds the backups and it takes all the backups.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And that would be a super valid use case, right? S3 itself is just a web protocol. So you can use it for anything, right? You can use it for application data, uploads. You can power a website, right? So you can have a separate S3 cluster running objects that wasn't used for backups, right? No. But if you're using it for backups, then you'd have your backup cluster that runs the backups, holds the backups, stores the backups.
Hey, so where do I put my tape robot library, and what time's the Iron Mountain guy coming?
You put it in a museum, and the Iron Mountain guy comes by for lunch whenever you invite him.
Yeah. Well, look, 15 years ago, that thing and the tape library and that was like the coolest thing.
The Iron Mountain guy can still come shred your paper. Okay.
If you, I've been watching this computer archive history project on YouTube. And they just do everything. Like if you want to watch a sales marketing video for like a mainframe from like the 60s, they have it. It's really cool stuff. I watched one last night about, just like typing broadly, right? It's like almost like a extended magical world of Disney about typewriters from like the 60s. And it talked about how, these folks that run offices and so forth would lay out like a bar chart in a typewriter, right? With like tab stops and like, here's the sales figures for this month. And it's like all done with nothing but a manual typewriter, like absolutely wild stuff. So look at the Computer Archive History Project on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. Your wife sits down and watches that with you?
Sometimes? No, I'm not even going to pretend. No, she does not.
I've got to get that. I got to share it with my kid, my son, and my adopted son, which is Chase, who's my new partner account manager.
Cool.
That'd be great. I love that stuff. It's kind of like binge watching, right? Do you find yourself binge watching it? Come on, tell the truth.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I won't lie.
I will too. I mean, I'll be like, oh, I can't go sleep. I got to watch one more. Here we go. Boom. That's pretty sad, but I like it. Can you download them?
It's YouTube. So
I don't know what that means. Can you download them?
That's a yes if you have the right tools and know how to download from YouTube.
Okay. I'll have to ask my kids how to do that.
There you go. Something we probably shouldn't legally talk about how to do on the podcast.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Good topic. We'll hit you again next week.
Cool. Talk to you guys.